Hi. Um, just thought I'd give a talk about states and stages of consciousness, and have a look at that, how that's explained in the Swedenborgian um, or internal Christianity um, perspective. Um, the stages which exist, like also explained extensively in Ken Wilber's work as stages of development, um, and the difference between that and states of development. Um, so um, basically, the easiest way to understand stages of development from a spiritual perspective is by the seven chakras. Seven chakras, which are in the human body. Um, you've got your most people know the chakras these days anyway, but there's seven of them, and there's that's explained in the Christian um, way is at the beginning of the Bible, the 7 days of creation. And I thought I'd just show this. This is a comic book of Emanuel Swedenborg, made by the New Church, and um, it's got this little thing on the 7 stages. So I thought I'd show how it goes in that, if I can actually do it. Okay, so this is the first one. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form, dark, empty, and dark. And then that's the picture. This one. And then it says, in infancy and before man's spiritual birth, the mind is in darkness without goodness or truth. And then the second day or stage of development, God said, let there be light. Man first realizes that there are truths of a higher kind. So, it's that one. And then on the second day, God said, let the waters be divided above and below the expanse. He called the expanse heaven. Knowledges in the mind are divided between the higher, which are of God, and the lower, which are of man in the world. So that's here. On the third day God said, let the dry land appear, let it sprout grass, herbs, and trees. Man's first attempts to do good come from the Lord. Man thinks it comes from himself, so his spirit is still dormant. That's this one here. On the fourth day, God created the sun, moon, and the stars to rule the day and night. Man begins to be inspired by love from God, the sun, and guided by faith in Him, the moon. He begins to realize that his good actions are inspired by God. His spirit begins to become alive. So that's this one. On the fifth day, God created creeping things, birds, and giant sea creatures. Because man acts from God's love and faith, and not from himself, he can truly said to be alive. His newly awakened understanding gives rise to new rational thoughts. On the sixth day, God created animals. Man's spiritual awareness grows. The gentle animals of genuine living affections are brought forth. The mind now acts from love instead of just faith or obedience. And then, finally, man is created in the image and likeness of God. The regenerated soul has won the victory over the evils of selfhood. The truly human being is born. And that's your seventh stage of development. So, in the chakra system, um, this is where I've put these. This is a thing from Ken Wilber, just talking about this. Waves and streams. Before outlining Piaget's findings on cognitive development, a brief word about my overall psychological model, of which cognitive development is only a part. This model consists essentially of waves, streams, states, and self. Waves are the basic levels of consciousness. Over a dozen major levels that range from subconscious to self-conscious to superconscious. I call them waves to indicate the fluid nature of these levels of consciousness. Oh, this is, I think, states. And the fact that they interpenetrate and overlap like colours in a rainbow and are not rigid rungs in a ladder. Streams are the various developmental lines such as cognitive, moral, psychosexual, affective, interpersonal, spiritual, and so on, that develop relatively independently through the basic waves or streams. So a person can, for example, be at a fairly high level of development cognitively, a medium level emotionally, and a low level morally. Development, in other words, is anything but a linear, step-by-step affair. So this is good to know in terms of the fact that we're talking about what seems like quite a linear model. States refer to altered states of consciousness, such as peak experiences, which are brief, temporary, but often powerful experiences, especially of the transpersonal realms. However, if development into the transpersonal is to become permanent and not merely passing, these states must be converted to traits. Altered states must become permanent structures or levels of consciousness. The self refers to the self system that navigates the waves, streams, and states as it makes its way through the great river of life. And here's like a thing that I did on the 7 chakras. You can see you've got natural base down here, and then attractive sex, creative power, and then human love, and then divine creativity, and then divine insight, and then divine love, or transcendent. And the thing about, and then you've got relevant bodies. You've got down here at the base, you've got mineral body, and then attractive sex, you've got plant body, creative power, animal body. Then at human love, you've got a human body. Divine creativity is a subtle body, and then divine insight is a causal body, and then up the top you've got a soul body. This is how I've done it, and I think it's pretty good. But you've got the soul body, which is talked about a lot in the Vaishnava tradition. And I put the rational in the middle at the solar plexus. Rational in this particular one. There's a good book by Carolyn Myss called Anatomy of the Spirit, it's the 7 stages of power and healing, and she shows how those 7 stages relate to the human body, and gives like application to how they can be used in healing and stuff like that as well. She's got ones like this, like, I don't know if you can, like, yeah. Yeah. Extreme unction. So that's the stages of development are like things that you're actually living and you're operating through. So if you do, how Ken Wilber says it is, he says states states are free and stages are earned, which means that your stage of development is the one that you're living through, um, and there's like so many different factors that can influence that, but it's basically your stage of development is where you're situated, or where your main sense of identity is situated. So where you operate from. Um, Whereas in your state development, you can go into a meditative state, and um, you can go right up into these high states of consciousness. Um, I was going to talk about that in relation to rasa, or in relation to your degree of closeness to the Lord, which is you notice mentioned in the Swedenborg one. But so essentially, there's a closeness that you can go through, which is like a um, um, yeah, yeah. Essentially, like you can go up into states, and then but how you'll interpret that state of consciousness will be relative to whatever stage you're at. So, um, if depending on what stage of development you're at, will be the way in which you interpret that meditation experience. So, um, your goal, the goal is really to do both, is to be advanced in state development, um, up into a high state of consciousness, which the East is really good for, the Eastern systems and stuff like that. But then all the benefits of the stages of Western developments, um, just as a kind of basic generalizing thing, you can look at that the West is better at stage development, and with all the developments in psychology and stuff like this. And then yet the East has been really good at developing states of consciousness and showing us how to enter into those altered states and make advancement like that, and say live in a state of consciousness permanently. But I mean, if you can get your stage and your state up there as well, that's really the best thing. Because if you have a low stage and a high state, then um, if you were teaching, like you'd be able to teach people a lot about meditation, but you might be giving them all kinds of weird kind of things that actually they might be at a higher stage of development, um, and think, why has he got these kind of views, or something like that. Or alternatively, you could be very like quite developed and have a lot of maturity and stuff, and cultural, you could say, or like kind of aspects like that, and then but not have much experience in altered states. So like if you do both, what Ken Wilber recommends is that you do your state development like twice a day or something like that, and go up into a high state. And he sort of describes that it creates stretch marks on the stage. So you're pushing yourself up all the time, and then you're more likely to go through an actual a stage development where you change your whole sense of identity, um, and have a new um, sense of identity. Um, and those I think I better stop, because I'm not sure how soon this will cut off. But essentially, in your stage stuff, that's where you get things like depression and stuff like that going on in between those bridges and stuff as well. So there's quite a lot going on, but I'll stop this and just maybe make another video on this.